Hello, everybody. This is Mr. Puzzles and More here, and welcome to my big, big video. Today, we are going to do something a little different for my channel. I usually don't do these types of videos, but after seeing some of a famous YouTuber called Schaffrillas Productions videos on cinematic masterpieces, I decided, why don't I do one on my own? Now, with the recent releases 3 weeks ago of Guns and Puzzles, where I am going to be doing my very own cinematic masterpiece, but this time it's not on any movie. It's an SMG4 episode. So expect this video to be long, and I teased this all the way back in my community post from 11 days ago. This is going to be a hard-ass project to make. It's going to be low budget, but it will have some moments that I hope you guys will enjoy. And I'm just playing through the episode real quick because there is a lot of shit to talk about. After the release of Guns and Puzzles, this is my second favorite SMG4 arc, right besides Revelations and after Western Spaghetti. If you've seen my SMG4 ranking video on my Shorts tab, go watch it, but it just proves that you can do this arc right. And I am going to be explaining the entirety of the Guns and Puzzles arc. I'm probably going to do more on other arcs in the future, but for now, let's get to review why Guns and Puzzles is a cinematic masterpiece. Before we go over the history of Guns and Puzzles, let's recap all the events that led us to this point. First of all, WotV 2024. At the end of WotV 2024, long story short, Puzzles was trying to open a park with Leggy, Mr. Puzzle Park, and long story short, he got defeated, which, I'm going to make a whole WotV 2024 video hopefully soon. But then he gets sent to prison, and he says, quote, "All this time I was going for 5-star ratings and fame, quote, fame is but a fleeting shadow. What I really needed was a friend," end quote. And he reminisces about Leggy, and then he says, quote, "The world is full of possibilities, and we shall experience them all." And at the end of WotV 2024, he is locked in a prison cell with Leggy 2.0, with his own creation, and this is a Mushroom Kingdom sealed prison. Fast forward to 2025, and we get introduced to another new character called ... also known as Mr. Weapons, who introduced himself in You Should Have Done That, based on this video tagline. Mr. Weapons, who we'll talk about later, quick recap on his character. Mr. Weapons was introduced in You Should Have Done That, and he was not properly introduced until the trailer for Silence of the Cats. He is the father of Karen, and he's the father of both Karen and his kids. And when Karen sees Mr. Weapons return again, he says, following, "Well, well, well, took you long enough." And Karen, in disbelief seeing his father, believes that he is, going to attack, but he's actually giving the kids a dinner. This is going to be a short little review. Yeah, but long story short, a lot of stuff happens, and then, Mr. Weapons goes full Cramorama mode on Karen. Karen is about to die, but the kids get the upper hand and defeat Mr. Weapons while the explosion goes off. And the final moments we see of him, he says, "See, Katana, I made them stronger. They need me." And then she stomps on him. And we find out he is still lying in the alley a few hours later, and hears a mysterious voice saying, "Oh dear, looks like you've seen better days." And he looks up at a giant TV screen. The voice continues, "What's the matter? Cat got your tongue?" Quote, "I know all too well what it's like to be on the cup of something magnificent, only for it to be ripped away, leaving you broken, or scarred, rather, broken, and alone. Hurts, doesn't it? In my darkest hour, the one thing I needed more than anything was simply a friend." And as the voice comes to a close, he says, "So what do you say?" And then the TV goes on, and it's revealed to be Mr. Puzzles himself. Also, side note, 3 weeks after this movie came out, Marty comes back. And I know this is non-canon and all, but, well, it is kind of canon. But we revealed in the episode The Little Fellas, Marty has a son. More on that later, maybe. But long story short, Marty took hold of a school, and he was actually trying to retrieve his son up until the police and the police car gets to him. And then the last moments we see of Marty, if we go to this timestamp, he is in prison with the kid. More on that later. And that leads us to part 1 of why this arc is a cinematic masterpiece. Starting off with the episode Split. After the events of the previous episode, which it's SMD3's new mascot, Maggie tries to look for a job, and then she stumbles across Egad. When was the last time we seen him? And Egad, Maggie is, hang on, I gotta speak my lines out. Maggie, Egad needs an assistant, and Maggie, goes on the machine, and then in a laser, Egad activates the machine, and up comes Leggy. Now, and then they show the clip from Wattv 2024. Now, Leggy, it has returned, and, 3 weeks after Marty did. And then, Leggy is stronger than Maggie. More on that in a second. And Leggy is actually a split form, and when she sees a TV, she's instantly reminded of Mr. Puzzles. And she goes cuckoo crazy, and then they show flashbacks and stuff. Now, Maggie is weak, but Leggy is still strong, and it's a separate personality. And Leggy takes hold of Egad, and then this episode is trying to say that Mr. Puzzles is going to come back. Well, 1 week later, we'll talk about that later. And then this whole plot of the episode is the SMG4 crew trying to stop Leggy. Pretty typical. Oh, no. Anyways, and then SMG4, SMG3, and Mario try to stop him with SMG4 being creepy. And then, and it's a bunch of little misadventures. And long story short, SMG4 tries to be Mr. Puzzles, and Leggy, being I don't even know what to say, she is, follows, and then the disguise is lifted. And then that's not until Maggie snaps at Leggy. He says, quotes, what Mr. Puzzles did to us? He's in jail, and you'll never see him again, end quote. And Leggy goes off crying, going to the facility that Mr. Puzzles was in during the Puzzle Park arc and whatever. And then Maggie is gonna go in, and she sees Mr. Puzzles' room that was in the whole entirety of the Puzzle Park arc, or probably that's where he went off to after Meme Factory. She sees Leggy, and the conversation is pretty good for its time. And, Maggie is trying to say, oh yeah, Puzzles is a bad man, but then Leggy says, no, Puzzles won't like. And then Maggie says, I get that Mr. Puzzles means a lot to you. You're the part of me that wants to see the good in him. And then she continues, but he has to be held responsible for what he did. That's why he's in jail. End quote. And then Leggy just says, no, we want Puzzles. Leggy wants Puzzles free. And then Maggie says, quote, I'll consider reaching out to Mr. Puzzles in a legal sense. And then she continues saying, only if you join back with me. And this was foreshadowing at the time that people were pissed about this. We know from 4 weeks ago that doesn't matter anymore. So long story short, Leggy goes back inside of Maggie, and Maggie gets her power back. And then the episode comes to a close with Maggie on her phone back at the house. And then she sees Mr. Puzzle's criminal record, and then she checks the sentencing, and she's in shock. She presses the button, and her eyes go to shock. And that episode takes place in June. So if we go to the SMP4 timeline, I don't have enough time to edit right now. Wattv 2024 takes place in October. Then Silence of the Cats takes place in April. And then Split takes place in June or July, maybe July or whenever the time. I don't even know the fucking timeline at this point. But yeah. And the next episode, Prison Vision, actually takes place in the span of a few months. You'll see what I mean. Let's get to part 2 of this theory, Prison Vision, which is a prequel to Split. So, this whole setting takes place probably, if not either a few months or right after the events of Waffy 2024. And the prison cell is not the same. And Mr. Puzzles says, I really wish for a 5-star service, even if I was caught off guard by how isolated this dreadful facility could be. Mr. Puzzles still holds Leggy 2.0 and says he'll never be alone again. And that's until Mr. Monitor shows up, and she holds Leggy 2.0, and then you know what he's going to do. He breaks the hell out of Leggy 2.0, and Puzzles is in a disrepair of state. He says, don't leave me again, Leggy. Please don't. And then Mr. Monitor's like, I don't care what you are. Just get back to your cell and do something perfectly. And then Puzzles, in a fit of rage, says, the best I can do? Oh, Monitor, you haven't seen anything. And he looks at the camera. The next scene, we'll talk about the next scene after this fucking ad. I know, this is low budget, but I'm doing this anyway. And now we are in the cafeteria area, and I think this is the span of a few weeks, and Mr. Puzzles is better all. And then he's advertising Mr. Puzzles Prison Play Spectacular, and he says, a daring story about a prison escape, and the roughest, toughest inmate can land such a prestigious role. Could it be you? And he points at Kirby, obviously. What the fuck was that Kirby thing? And then, remember when I said Marty was important in this segment? Well, who shows up during the prison? That's right, Marty. Like I mentioned earlier, that Little Fellas episode was canon. And on the left, right next to Wario, and then we also have this guy, that is a new character from SMG4. And if you don't know who this bomb guy is, well, I'm not going to mention him since he was important to a later episode, but I have to get my space in. But anyways, this is Albamo, and he was first introduced in the SMG3's new mascot video, and I said in that reaction the Albamo arc was happening, and I was partially right. And, you know, Albamo, long story, in that episode, Albamo was a prisoner, and then he escaped, and then did some stuff with Meggy, which I'll not talk about, but last we see him is trying to go to SMG3's Coffee and Bombs, and, you know, that failed miserably. But anyways, Mr. Puzzles is trying to perform everything. Wario doing a burp, Marty doing absolutely nothing, Albamo dancing, but that all falls to shit. And Mr. Puzzles is saying, we need someone more powerful. And then Amazon HQ, probably few weeks later at the end of Silence of the Cats, or probably if not a day later, and Mr. Weapons is still in disrupt repair, and he is getting Vietnam flashbacks, like you know, a war veteran, Vietnam flashbacks to when he was defeated by Karen, and it ends with Karen stomping on him, and then in a fit of rage, his hand gets moved forward. And now we go back to Mr. Puzzles' side of the story. He's trying to test these inmates on how to be bad. Albamo is in a toilet. This guy, you know, gets his ass beaten. And then Wario also hides in a plant, but we're not going to show that. But Mr. Puzzles is distraught with how these prisoners can't do anything. And then Mr. Puzzles overhears these two guards and says, there is a new powerful entity. I bet he will wipe the floor. And Mr. Puzzles hears this and says, who is this esteemed walking weapon? And then the name of the entity is Tomb, which more important on that later. And then we see a silhouette of what Tomb could look like. And his cell is cell 57. Now, I did not notice at the time, but this is a clear reference to one of the Amazing Digital Circus number 57. If you don't know Amazing Digital Circus, they use this number in one of the episodes. I forgot. And then Mr. Puzzles goes to cell 57 and meets Tomb, who similarly looks like another Eldritch creature. I'll be putting a picture right now. The Eldritch Goop. Tomb literally looks like the Eldritch Goop, and we're going to see more of those similarities later. And the Eldritch Goop, was from the It's Gotta Be Perfect movie. Many people pointed out that Tomb and the Eldritch Goop looked similar. Like, they both wear red, they both have eyes, they both have creepy factors, and a little bit later, they both have the same tentacle, which I will prove way later after we get to the point. And Mr. Puzzles is conveniently joking around like he did in the Meme Factory arc. He says, the big bad Tomb, everyone fears it is a mere blob, and then Tomb literally goes at his face and almost destroys his precious TV head. Mr. Puzzles is once again ruined by this, and he wishes someone would free him, and glimmer of hope in this bleak prison and stuff, until he sees the news report that Tomb put on. Mr. Weapons is on the news, and Puzzles is loving it. And then he says Mr. Weapons is perfect for the partner in crime, and then he says how much get in touch with him. Although when he shoots his laser, it doesn't seem to work until it hits Tomb. And that hit, Tomb literally has radioactive powers, perhaps. Tomb kind of reminds me of, that show, Morphe and the Magic Pets? I recently heard of it, and one of the characters, Morphe, I don't want to go into kids show stuff, but long story short, Morphe and the Magic Pets has a character named Morphe, and I put this similar state. Morphe looks a lot like Tomb, and Tomb looks a lot like Morphe. Could it be? And we'll see this with Tomb later in this arc. And anyway, let's continue. Mr. Puzzles, using Tomb's ability, goes in the TV dimension. Well, one of the TV dimensions. There's fucking many of these things. He first goes into the NASA station, and Swag and Chris are there. They were important. They were right next to Mr. Puzzles' cell at the end of WAPI 2024. And this room actually is the same room that Swag and Chris, were in the Internet is Down episode. I forgot the name. But yeah, it's the same one. And the reason why I say this is a prequel, because this is probably before the internet incident, in the Internet is Down episode, which was before this episode's timeline. And Mr. Puzzles swims up with Mario water effects until he sees Mr. Weapons from Silence of the Cats. And it ends with Karen saying, "You screwed with the wrong family," before cutting to Mr. Weapons on the photo on the TV. And then we get a flashback to when Mr. Puzzles first greets Weapons, and it ends with "wannabe friends." And then Weapons says hard pass. And then Weapons and Puzzles are currently arguing right now to see, which side is which. And then, Puzzles is talking about how his family, hates him. And yeah. And the greatest killer, a walking weapon, turned into a failure of a family man. How tragic. And then, Mr. Weapons is saying, "You really want something from me?" And Puzzles says this quote, "and make you better by erasing those memories of that wretched family," end quote. Weapons is kind of confused by this and also kind of heartbroken, and Puzzles continues, "Oh, spare yourself down your little trip memory lane. Your family hates you, remember? What else do you have left to lose?" End quote. And he continues saying, and Mr. Weapons agrees with Puzzles, but he won't do this until and then Mr. Puzzles cuts him off, and then he says, "Drag over yourself to the junkyard. We'll be in touch." And the episode ends with Mr. Puzzles and Tomb in the prison, and Mr. Puzzles says, "All in due time indeed, friend." And the episode ends. This episode was probably, if not one of the better SMG4 episodes than this year. This episode just proves that this is a prequel. Oh boy, there's so many ads on this thing. Hang on a second. There's so many of these fucking ads. Hang on, sorry about that. Anyways, this episode was perfect for a number of reasons. One, Mr. Puzzles is literally in this episode, my favorite SMT4 character of all time. You don't say it otherwise. Toomp is introduced in this episode, and we actually get the resolution from the post-credit scene of Silence of the Cats. And Mr. Monitor was in this episode too. Pretty good, to say the least. Yeah, there were some problems with the episode, but I'm not going to explain those here. I'm only going to explain the compliments of the episode. I probably will make a short, but I'm probably not gonna to. But yeah, this episode was top tier in the arc department. My favorite character in this series is back, along with the new villain, perhaps. But anyways, yeah, this episode was pretty good, and what could be the standards for this arc? I'm sure hoping the next episode will be better than this. Probably not, but we'll have to see right after this. Part 4. A very unlikely friendship. This episode, these arc episodes keep getting better and better as the arcs go on. Plot in this episode: Mr. Puzzles is still in prison with Toomp, and he needs to escape from the prison, and and then and then Mr. Puzzles is saying that Toomp has to willingly go out to find Mr. Weapons, who is still damaged. I can't believe he did not get it repaired by now. And then Mr. Weapons thinks that it's Mr. Puzzle showing up, but no, it's Toomp. Toomp actually got out of the prison, and then Toomp turns on a conveniently placed TV, and wait a minute. Why is there a circle there? Oh, wait, that might be an editing error, but it probably might be. Yeah, and then Mr. Weapons sees the report of sentence to the Death Cube. More on the Death Cube a bit later. Mr. Puzzles, with the help of Toomp creates a new body, and this, can we call this cursed or not? I mean, personally, it looks like something the Mimic would use. More on that later. Anyways, Weapons is currently saying you need to do... Yeah, anyways, you gotta spend your last few hours with the clock ticking down, and Mr. Puzzles turns on a news report. Pauline, from pretty good timing since Donkey Kong Bonanzas was coming out, and then Pauline says former CEO of Puzzlevision, Mr. Puzzles, will be sentenced to the newest form of execution. And then we get introduced to the Death Cube with a mysterious image. More on the Death Cube a bit later. And then Mr. Puzzles, seeing this news, he's like, oh shit, I gotta do something. And then Mr. Puzzles, with the help of Toomp and Weapons, Mr. Puzzles tries to fix Mr. Weapons, but it all goes to shit. And it leads to an argument with Mr. Weapons and Mr. Puzzles. We'll be seeing way more of this in the coming arcs. And it ends with Weapons and Puzzles saying, that Mr. Weapons called him a box-headed bastard, and Mr. Puzzles saying Mr. Weapons is a Tin Can travesty. And Mr. Puzzles' connection goes out. And we're back in the prison where Mr. Puzzles is meeting G-Man. And G-Man says he got a phone call, so you better make it count. And we all knew who it was going to be. Meggy. And now, this is where the timeline gets really confusing. Wattfi 2024 takes place, and then probably the first half of Prison Vision. Probably one of the first thirds of the Prison Vision episode. Then Silence of the Cats. Well, almost all of the movie, besides the post-credit scene. Then Mr. Weapons' defeat, probably a few minutes after that, aftermath. Then the second half of Prison Vision. Then the post-credit scene of Silence of the Cats. And then the final 2 minutes of Prison Vision. And Split. And this episode. I mean, yeah. Is the timeline confusing? Yeah, it is. Now, this episode takes place in July. And Meggy sees the Death Cube sentencing on TV, and he talks to Puzzles about lawyering up to defend him, and he says, this doesn't change anything. This was only to get you out of the Death Cube penalty. She's only doing this because Leggy believes in him. And then she continues, I need proof you changed. I won't defend you if you're the same old villain. And Mr. Puzzles is he's lying, He said, and then he brainwashes the guard, and oh my god, that part was probably, if not the funniest use for Richard Animations' face. And back with Toomp and Weapons, Toomp is just maniacally looking at him. More on that a bit later. And Mr. Puzzles takes a selfie with Mr. Weapons. This is part of his plan, of course. More on that selfie a bit later. And he says he's sorry for welching helping this endless old man in his final hours. Oh, how cruel the world will be. And Maggie just saying, and this picture is going to be important for later. And then Maggie says, aren't you supposed to be in prison? And Puzzles conveniently lies. And then it says, it'll be the last time I'm assuming, and I chose spend my borrowing time caring for the elderly. Currently lying at this point. But Maggie actually gets him and says, you're in, but no tricks, no games. And Maggie says, just meet me at the castle in a few days. For your sake, I really hope you change. Mr. Puzzles is excited, while meanwhile Mr. Weapons and Tube are just still there. Tube going absolutely ham. And this is when the arc gets real. Mr. Puzzles is saying that he needs to, do some stuff, and then Mr. Weapons says, you'll fly. The reference from that part of Silence of the Cats where he teaches Katie to fly. And he actually references that in his speech. Quote, it was something I said to my kid once. She took a risk and paid it off. I'm proud of all them, but I suppose guys like us aren't supposed to have a family. And Mr. Puzzles, this was an emotional moment until he says, and then Mr. Puzzles mocks Mr. Weapons and says, guys like us aren't supposed to have a family. And then Mr. Puzzles says he scored the title of the star of a next big play. And fast forwarding later in the night, fast forwarding later that night, Toomp is looking for Mr. Weapons, and then he finally gets him, carries his whole body. I don't know how he does that. Mr. Puzzles notices Toomp going inside. And I obviously knew that Toomp was going to repair him. I did not know until the very last second. And then Mr. Puzzles thinks that Toomp is killing Mr. Weapons, when in reality, Toomp is actually repairing Mr. Weapons. And his eyes open up, and his new body looks sexy as hell. And Mr. Puzzles says, all according to plan. Excellent handiwork, Toomp, just like I taught you. And Mr. Puzzles has one more plan before their grand finale. He needs to have some old adversaries you need to visit, and that's referencing the SMG4 crew. And Mr. Weapons and Mr. Weapons and Toomp agreed to the idea. And then Mr. Puzzles in prison says they need to visit the showgrounds. And what do you know? Mr. Weapons and Toomp run off to the showgrounds in the next episode. And Mr. Puzzles is still holding on to that brainwash of hers and says, sure, pal. This episode basically proves the theory that Lawyer Maggie's returning and Mr. Weapons and Toomp are heading to the showgrounds. This episode basically has all you ever wanted from a villain team-up arc. Well, kind of. Yeah, there were some problems, but yeah. But anyways, this episode had a lot of Mr. Puzzles in it, and I was kind of emotional during some parts, but yeah. But anyways, I love rewatching these episodes. It is for my personal sake. I love Mr. Puzzles and all. This is my favorite SMG4 character of all time. Don't say it otherwise. But anyway, I think we're getting 28 minutes of screen time. It's just so good from my phone. But anyways, let's get to the next episode before the 30-minute limit. Part 5, the final step. This episode is the final episode before the movie, and it starts off with Mr. Weapons and Toomp training for what they're going to do with the SMG4 castle. Meanwhile, back with Puzzles in prison, says he's looting a castle. And then Weapons and Toomp are in disbelief, and it's the SMG4 castle. But Mr. Weapons should be hyped by now. But Mr. Weapons is clearly saying, we were doing this just for a castle? And then this clown house will have exactly what they need, which they gotta search for the mushroom or jewelry box or whatever. But yeah, and Mr. Puzzle's like, if you pause here, this is me whenever I go to that crummy ass pool. And yeah, anyways, Mr. Weapons and Toomp go in the castle, and they try to avoid many things. And, oh, wait a minute. And what do you got here? Oh, the closest thing we'll get to a 4 villain, kind of. You see this Goober Eats sign with Marty? Mr. Weapons was right next to Goober Eats. So Mr. Weapons possibly looked at the Goober Eats bag with Marty on there? Mr. Weapons knows Marty exists? That's just a theory. An SMG4 theory. Okay, I'll shut up now. Tomb and Mr. Weapons are successfully going inside the castle, and Tomb eats the keyboard, and look at the little dancing Tomb. And Mr. Weapons is like, it's like a fourth son to him because he lost his other 3, but this is his fourth son now. And more on this dynamic in a moment. And then Mr. Weapons and Tomb look at Bob, who is sleeping. And then Mr. Weapons says, Tomb, show me what you got. And then it references Silence of the Cats with him saying the exact same thing to his kids. And look at his eyes here. This is me whenever I don't even know. Caption this GIF. This is me whenever I see something emotional in my life. Anyways, Mr. Weapons tries to wake up Bob, but Bob is just too stupid to sleep, and then they break out the window, and they got a drill. Probably could have used a drill, probably to sneak up on, probably use a drill for earlier, but anyways. And then we get a whole montage of Mr. Weapons and Tomb stealing some stuff, stealing Haisu Miko from Boopkins, and more importantly, Meggy's gun. And yeah, this is the first time Weapons meets Meggy for the first time, and I love it, man. And I'll just look at this line here. I even went to a little extra and took the gun from that orange girl. What the fuck was this line, man? Oh my god. And Mr. Puzzles is saying, what? I told you specifically not to do it. And then he says, you're welcome. And then Mario, knows that Mr. Weapons is there, and then he barks at them, and then it's the morning, and he's sleeping. And meanwhile, back at the castle, Meggy's just like, and Meggy gets a text from Mr. Puzzles, but he doesn't respond. SMG4 is in disbelief. And it leads to an argument, and then we get a flashback from the Split episode. I'll consider reaching out to Mr. Puzzles. That line from the Split episode. And then Meggy and SMG4 are getting into an argument. This is one of many arguments that will be coming. And then Meggy's saying, we should be reforming criminals, not sending them to their deaths. And then SMG4 interrupts her and says, I bet he was the one that stole our stuff. And Meggy's just like, no, he did not. And SMG4 is like, yes, he did. That's why he's getting the sentence. Don't you remember? And then Meggy's like, of course they do. But why should we try to decide who lives or dies? And Bob and SMG3 are currently, And the 5 trio, Bob, SMG3, Mario, Boopkins, SMG4, and, the quad are in, long story short, Mario, SMG4, Boopkins, Bob, and all those 5 believe Mr. Puzzle stole them. And that's not until Mr. Weapons goes to the house and gets the mushroom, but it's actually a PVZ fume shroom. I love fume shroom from PVZ2 or PVZ1. And then the SMG4 crew think it's Mr. Puzzles, but no, it's Mr. Weapons. Hey, and Meggy meeting Weapons for the first time was amazing. And you know who else met Mr. Weapons? That's right, Karen. And both of the characters are coincidentally voiced by Elsie Lovelick. And Weapons almost tried to kill Karen, and Weapons almost tried to kill Meggy. If I had a nickel for every time a gunman tried to kill 2 characters coincidentally voiced by Elsie Lovelick, I have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right? Anyway, we get this epic fight scene with Mr. Weapons putting out his guns, shooting the SMG4 crew, and this is just one of, if not the many fight scenes I will be covering in this. And I have to do a whole breakdown of this. Anyways, Weapons first goes for Bob, and then SMG4 and SMG3 with the power of Railgun and the gravity gunning Egg Dog, and Meggy going in for the bomb. Pretty good. And Mario looks at Tomb, foreshadowing, and Mr. Weapons just retreats, but no, he gets a symbiote suit. It's kind of like Venom a little bit. And dude, this design, I love it. Tomb combined with Mr. Weapons. We should do this with more SMG4 villains, you know? Mr. Puzzles combined with SMG Zero. I don't. If Zero ever returns, please do that. No. Anyways, Mr. Weapons grows tentacles, and do you know what those remind me of? That's right, the Eldritch Goop. Tomb and the Eldritch Goop are probably, if not one of the same things, and I'll reference this later when we get to Guns and Puzzles, and I will review it in a moment. But going back to this fight, this is where the fight gets really ham. Mr. Weapons almost kills the SMG4 crew, but Tomb is just like, no, I don't want it. And we got to get back to Mr. Puzzles. And yeah, you could tell Tomb was like, no, don't kill them. And Meggy goes up, and coincidentally voiced by Elsie Lovelace. Two Elsie characters, Karen and Meggy, know who Mr. Weapons is now. And Tomb tries to, stop him, and he does. And then he says, all right, fine, I'll get it. Boxhead's going to be impatient. Meggy, hearing the word Boxhead, obviously reminds her of Mr. Puzzles. And Mr. Weapons and Tomb are currently driving to the prison. And Mr. Puzzles is still locked in prison. And then the screen then goes, and then Mr. Puzzles gets a phone call from Meggy, but here comes Mr. Monitor. Mr. Monitor says that Mr. Puzzles will not be executed in a week. He will be executed tonight. And Mr. Puzzles is in a pure look of shock. And then Mr. Monitor says, enjoy your final hours. As we go to the clock is going to strike 12 in a moment. And Mr. Puzzle says, change of schedule, gentlemen. The breakout is happening tonight. And we end with July 26, 2025. Overall, another fantastic episode. The stakes were low, mid, or even high for some people, but this episode was still a good episode. I literally love how the animation was changing from each and every episode. And plus that fight scene with Mr. Puzzles and Mr. Weapons and Tomb, pretty much one of the two fight scenes I loved. Anyways, I love this episode basically because they retcon a lot of stuff. But hey, I like this episode for what it's worth. It's just my personal opinion. And this episode, I love. I'm sorry. But yeah, this was pretty much the final episode before the main event. Speaking of the main event, okay, I'm screwed this. We're just gonna get to it. Guns and Puzzles. How do I do an intro? Oh yeah. Number 6 finale. Guns and Puzzles. Yeah, okay, this movie begins a few minutes after the last episode. Mr. Weapons and Tomb are currently driving to the prison. Mr. Puzzles is giving them instructions, and while Mr. Puzzles is on his final hours, he's gonna put on one last play. The Mr. Puzzles Prison Play Spectacular. Mr. Puzzles shares his backstory, which we heard 2 times already. We don't need to hear this backstory unless it shows in a flashback. What are you doing, SMG4? Anyways, yeah. Puzzles basically recaps the entire of 2024 and the first half of 2025 with Leggy, how they became best friends, how Leggy got defeated, and the toaster with Mr. Weapons, synchronized with Mr. Weapons and Tomb going to the prison and saving Mr. Puzzles from execution. And you can already tell this movie is going to be top tier. We'll talk about the fight scene. Oh, I can't wait to talk about the fight scene. I'm getting ahead of myself. And Mr. Puzzles is, losing his mind. And then he reminisces about Leggy being gone. And he's slowly going insane. and he's like talking to a basketball and slowly losing his mind. And this scene was pretty good. And now we go to Mr. Puzzles is calling with Meggie. And Meggie obviously says that you hurt my friends, but you negatively have found the lives of countless people. And Mr. Puzzles is like, yeah? And then he says, but I think and then Meggie says, prove to me that you're not the villain to say you are. And Mr. Puzzles is like, yes. And then Maggie's like, yeah. Basically, she does and does not believe Puzzles at the same time. And then Mr. Puzzles sees Mr. Weapons, obviously the toaster, and then Mr. Puzzles goes on this play. Meanwhile, Mr. Weapons and Tomb are in the underground levels of the prison, and Tomb uses the mushroom to grow the drill while Mr. Puzzles is doing his play. I love this part because it's doing his play, and basically it's just one of, if not the greatest moments in anything. And while Mr. Weapons is drilling, he briefly gets flashbacks again, and Tomb stops him like the fourth son Mr. Weapons has before Mr. Weapons goes cuckoo crazy. And oh my god, can you just look at this face? Like, what the fuck is that? Okay, just kidding. Yeah, anyways. After Tomb slaps Mr. Weapons 1,000 times and snaps him out of it, he does snap out of it. And then they go to what is supposedly the sewing unit. A sewer unit, but it's actually a sewing unit. Yep, and Mr. Weapons and Tomb try to find disguises, but yeah, it doesn't work. And then Mr. Weapons blasts the heck out of those guys before summoning more guards. All while meanwhile, Mr. Puzzles is saying, we're gonna arrive at the grand finale. Not until Mr. Weapons shows up and everything goes to shit. And we get this really heartfelt moment. And he says, like, oh, look, my dancing buddy is here. And then Mr. Weapon says, yeah, I'm not going to do this. And then we get to the part that everybody was doing. I did a plus version of the short. You know what? I'm going to play this scene for good measure. Roll that tape.
Sorry, friends, I got to go. We're glad you came to enjoy the show. Moon's my lookout, stars my guide. Let's do that jailbreak jive.
We really should be on our way. Don't know the words or what to say.
Okay, that's enough for today.
Hey, I never asked to be in a show like this beforehand.
No bars can hold a tune like mine.
Not without me by your side.
Yeah, I already rolled the tape. So, let's continue with the movie, shall we? After that incredible song, we finally, Mr. Puzzles is saying they want an encore. And, oh, wait, is that female Mr. Puzzles right there? Oh, yeah, a fan of Mr. Puzzles is really happy about this. Meanwhile, back at the castle, the SMG4 crew are planning their interrogation with Mr. Puzzles. Meggie is in full disbelief of this, and SMG4 are planning their thing while Meggie is cooking dinner, and she sucks at cooking as usual. You can expect Meggie, my little woomy girl, to be so sucky at cooking. And then we go back with Mr. Puzzles and Mr. Weapons, who are just talking about what their plans are going to be. Mr. Puzzles is suggesting a kidnapping, but Mr. Weapons it does not want to do that. And he suggests robbing a bank filled with guns and explosions. But Mr. Puzzles rejects the idea, but we want to do the kidnapping. Trust the vision. And Weapons tries to reason with Puzzles, but Mr. Puzzles goes creepy mode and says, I just have to. This makes more sense, more than you know. And then he compromises with Weapons and says, if we do this, then you'll do your guns, explosions, and whatever the hell you want. And Tomb looks at them like, I'm not doing this shit with you guys. And then Weapons and Puzzles are going out for a walk, but yeah, my bike is gone. What the hell happened with my bike? And Mr. Monitor takes off the female Puzzles' face, and he knows it's a fake. And he summons all of the police here. And they don't have a car until, remember when I mentioned Morphe earlier, from Morphe and the Magic Pets? Well, Tomb transforms into a Tomb-a-cycle, whatever the hell this is called. I like to call it the Tomb-a-cycle. Kind of like Morphe from Morphe and the Magic Pets, but only a little better or worse? Anyway, and this leads into an epic shootout with with Mr. Puzzles and weapons versus the police. And I'm so happy they brought these guys back. They showed up in the SMG3's new mascot video, and I'm so happy they're using the Super Mario 64 policemen again. It's been a while since they used them. Mr. Weapons shoots the cars and they explode 191. And then Mr. Puzzles tries to get Mr. Weapons to shoot the helicopter with the aim, and then Mr. Puzzles and Weapons are in a little bit of trouble until Puzzles has the idea to calm their radio dolls because he's a TV, why wouldn't he? And the plan works successfully. And Weapons says, "Wow, as much as I want to punch you, thanks for saving us, I guess." And this is when the movie really begins to peak. Their friendship is still continuing. And why does Puzzles have glasses? Oh my god! And this shot of Mr. Puzzles is just, oh my god, look at the fucking glasses. Oh, I want to sell it so much. Okay, anyways, let's continue. Meanwhile, back with Monitor, he summons the Death Cube. And can we just take a look at this design real quick? We'll talk about it in a moment. And while that's going on, Weapons and Puzzles are currently on their Toompa cycle. I like to call this the Toompa cycle until it runs out of fuel. And Mr. Weapons is trying to say, "Run out of Toompa Tube," while Mr. Puzzles is saying, "Why do you sound like that?" And Mr. Puzzles tries to replicate Weapons. And Mr. Weapons says, "You're embarrassing yourself." He is, kind of. And after that, they go to a conveniently placed grocery store. Mr. Puzzles is impatient like he always is. And Weapons and Tomb are having a good dynamic. But Mr. Puzzles is like, yeah, right, of course. And Mr. Weapons talks with Mr. Puzzles and says, "Oh yeah, the obsession, the planning, always watching your back, can't shut your brain off. But for once, please, for tonight, we gotta get friends." And this is the whole movie, friendship. This is what it gets off the guard. And then Mr. Puzzles realizes something behind him, and it's the Death Cube. We'll get to the Death Cube's voice actor in a moment, but damn, can we take a look at this design? And can we take a look at what the fuck this is? And take a look. Take a look at what the fuck is inside this thing. More It's Gotta Be Perfect references. They cannot keep getting away with this. Anyways, yeah, and before we get to the awesome chase scene, let's go skip to the end credits, because there is a really important, because I gotta show you, oh fuck, wait, I gotta show you who the voice actor for the Death Cube is. So fast forward to the end right here. If you don't know who the Death Cube's voice actor is, the voice actor for the Death Cube is none other than Phil Mendoza, who also recently voice acted one of the characters from Amazing Little Circus episode 6. Yeah, so he voiced the Death Cube and one of the characters from episode 6 of the Amazing Little Circus, the NPC. Let's get to the fight scene now, because I'm losing my mind. Mr. Puzzle's Weapons and Tomb go on the Toompa cycle again, and the Death Cube chases after them, and we get this really good fight scene. Oh my god, why do they can't keep getting away with this? Yeah, I mean, yeah, this fight scene was amazing. And then the Death Cube is trying to win. This fight scene, oh, I can't even stress enough. Yeah, Tomb transforms into a Tomb car. Mr. Puzzles shoots the television, and this gets the Death Cube distracted. But yeah, and Mr. Puzzles gets caught by the Death Cube, and Tomb transforms into a Eldritch monster, kind of like Eldritch Peach and Eldritch SMG3, kind of. And they have a big kaiju fight, and Weapons gets a hold of the world's largest battery and unleashes unlimited power. And then this explodes the Death Cube in them, and they go flying. And I realize that this is kind of like the scene where he's in Sounds of the Cats, where I mentioned earlier. He says, "You'll fly." Weapons tries to reminisce about what they can do. And Weapons, I thought Weapons was going to fly, but Weapons conveniently uses Tomb. I would have loved to see even better if Mr. Weapons can grow wings. Please make that happen. Those kind of look like wings, but they're not. It's just part of his coat. Wish that could be wings though. And then we get this moment. This, and I cannot stress enough, really means something to me, because let's face it, I'm seeing these two misters go together. And yeah, long story short, Mr. Weapons and Tomb are going to head towards the castle. While Puzzles is just like, I'm feeling regret over this, man. And then we go back to the SMG4 castle where Maggie just cooked a horrible dinner. Like she always does. She'll never learn, doesn't he? And Maggie gets remorse for what SMG4 said in the previous episode. And then SMG4 sets up turrets for when Mr. Puzzles shows up. And SMG4 tries to call Mr. Puzzles, but it doesn't work. And Maggie thought SMG4 was gonna kill Puzzles, but she's actually helping her, which I don't know if it's a lie or not. And back with Mr. Weapons and Puzzles, they're conveniently saying that that last fight was pretty good until Mr. Weapons sees the border and the showgrounds. Mr. Puzzles has to choose either the border or the showgrounds. And Mr. Weapons confesses about him, saying, wiping my mind and dingling over me, you can forget about it. I'm good. Yeah, shocking, right? And yeah, Weapons tries to talk about the family, and then he gives Puzzles the bullet. And he says, keep it, because I got your back. No matter how crazy this gets, but you should think about letting go, like I did. Letting go, foreshadow for the very end of this movie. And yeah, pretty much after this scene, the last 16 minutes are basically cinema. You guys ready? I'm ready. Let's talk about it. And Puzzles tries to lift the car, and then he tries to, Mr. Puzzles has to choose between Mr. Weapons and Maggie. And the last 16 minutes are probably the best part of the movie. Let's break this down. So it starts with them arriving at the showgrounds, and Mr. Puzzles is going inside while Mr. Weapons and Tomb are doing nothing. More on that later. And SMG4 was waiting for his arrival, and Lawyer Maggie is here. And SMG4 wants to kill him so bad, but he deactivates the turrets. And we get the Lawyer Maggie scene. Now, during the Split episode, everyone was pissed off that we were going to get a Lawsuit Arc 2.0, but this is at least better. Yeah, this whole scene was better than all of the Lawsuit Arc, and I cannot stress otherwise. So Mr. Puzzles is trying, to defend himself. Maggie wants to ask him a few questions. The first question we don't hear, but Mr. Weapons is still outside, and then he hears sirens. That is either the police or the Death Cube. We don't know who that is at the moment. And Maggie asks what Puzzles has been doing. And Puzzles conveniently lies, and, frenzy amount of smiles ensued. Maggie currently disbelieves this, but, And Puzzles is saying he wants to have a friend, and, you want that feeble man you sent a couple days ago. Remember we talked about this picture earlier. And Maggie conveniently notices something. When you sent me that photo, you said those were the old man's final hours. And Puzzles realizes this and plays that audio flashback. And then Puzzles tries to, reason with him. And Maggie says you just met him a couple days ago, referencing Prison Vision, which Prison Vision take place in April. And we know what has been really going on with Puzzles? Not until Mr. Weapons shows up. And the last 13 minutes is absolute cinema, and I'm so glad you're going to be here for it. The scene starts off with Mr. Weapons grabbing a hold of Maggie, kind of like what Mr. Weapons did with Karen. Oh, if I had a nickel for every time that happened with Karen and Maggie, I have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right? Anyway, continuing on with the scene, Puzzles is furious that Mr. Weapons is holding Maggie hostage, and Mr. Puzzles tries, and then Mr. Puzzles gets weapons for trying to hurt one of the other best friends, and Mr. Puzzles locks weapons up, and Maggie says, yeah, I guess you were a Frozen after all, but this is when the movie really begins to go to shit. Toomp is still lying on the ground, and Mr. Puzzles tries to compliment his victory, and then they say, thanks, Mr. Puzzles, thanks, Mr. Puzzles, and Mr. Puzzles is literally celebrating right now. I love it, I love it, I love it. And Mr. Weapons, Mr. Puzzles with that blushy face. If this was my Tumblr sexy man, this is what anybody's profile would be. Just this diva. But Mr. Weapons escapes his prison, escapes his things somehow, and Toomp is also here too. How did Toomp open the door? Anyways, and then we get this awesome fight scene. These last 10 minutes are gonna be cinema, and you are going to fucking like it. Anyways, let's get on to the scene. The scene starts with Weapons punching Puzzles and Toomp going on the Puzzle's face, and then Mr. Puzzles shockwaves the characters, and then it plays 3 times. It's like an instant replay. And Weapons goes for the face, obviously. And we get this dynamic, which, you can tell they were animating the shit out of this part. And he says, don't you get to walk away? What about the breakout? Running from that fridge? You even offer to erase my memory. And then Mr. Puzzles interrupts him, and, he says, spare me the dramatics while shooting Weapons. And every little part of this fight scene is just, like, we're not even getting to the best part yet, and this is already good. And then he says, me, you, Toomp, we were friends. Don't you get it, you idiot? It was never between us. It was never between us. You mean nothing to me, and you're mere means to an end. Weapons is full-on rage mode now, and he beats up Mr. Puzzles, and Mr. Weapons obviously has the clear idea to tell them, he's gonna tell them what do they think about his little acting career, huh? And Mr. Puzzles is in shock. Toomp locks him up, but remember, Puzzles has the ability of television, and sends Mr. Puzzles and Toomp into the TV dimension. The SMG4 are in shock, especially Maggie. And then this is when the last 8 minutes of the movie are peak. We get this whole ass multiverse of madness kind of fight scene. And let's break this down real quick. We go from Team Fortress 2 to Team Fortress 2 Western Edition to like this paint world color dimension to plushies to fucking 1930s London or whatever, Star Wars, Baldi's Basics, Friday Night Funkin', and then we finally go to the TV dimension. And this right here is my second favorite SMG4 fight scene of them all. Like, you can tell they were animating the shit out of this. This whole scene. Let me compare it to another fight scene real quick. And I'm bringing up this fight scene from Revelations. This fight scene is still my favorite SMG4 fight scene. Guns and Puzzles is my second, but this, like, compared to Revelations, where you had this epic fight scene with SMG Zero Melanie, like, this still takes the cake as my number 1 favorite SMG4 movie, and probably, if not the best SMG4 dialogue, fight scenes, and writing. Like, you could tell, the animation on this movie was insane, and you can tell this was my first SMG4 movie of all time. The fight scenes were good, and you could tell. You thought Revelations had good fight scenes? Well, it still holds up as one of the best SMG4 movies with the best fight. Guns and Puzzles takes Revelations is even further. Even though Revelations had the better fight scenes, this one wins just because of the animation. Revelations is my favorite SMG4 movie with the best fight scenes. This is a close second for me. It starts with Mr. Weapons shooting his guns while Tomb is on top of him. Mr. Puzzles pausing them and doing it Matrix style, pawning Mr. Weapons and Tomb to the dust, and then a fucking train appears from the Puzzle Vision TV. Like, what even is this shit? I was literally screaming when this happened. Like, go check my reaction video for more info. And we get this Spider-Man kind of reference, like right here with the train fight with Peter and Doc Ock in Spider-Man 2. And Puzzles says, there is only one person who could ever truly be my friend, while showing it. And then Mr. Weapons says, you don't deserve to be having friends. Not anymore. And Puzzles, in a fit of rage, summons Doc Ock tentacles. And this is why this scene is compared to Spider-Man 2 and probably Spider-Man No Way Home and Across the Spider-Verse. Mr. Puzzles pauses Mr. Weapons and Tomb. Pause it. And then he says, it's no wonder you're only capable of bonding with a mindless blob. And the way he says blob and then that creepy face is good. Tomb and Weapons reemerge. Tomb and Weapons face off with Mr. Puzzles. And Mr. Puzzles summons an army, and Mr. Puzzles says, this is when I lost my shit. This shit really means something to me. Weapons easily punches all of the Mr. Puzzles', the copy Mr. Puzzles' until they face the real one. And then he punches Mr. Puzzles in the... I don't even want to say. Mr. Puzzles goes full on Super Saiyan mode. Mr. Weapons easily punches Mr. Puzzles. He says, had enough yet, pal? And Mr. Puzzles rages and holds Mr. Weapons and says the following lines. You're a waste of time. It's no wonder your family abandoned you. And that line alone, Mr. Weapons goes ram on him. He literally roars them up, and Mr. Puzzles is going back in his little TV. And can we just take like time to acknowledge this? Mr. Weapons and Tomb stab Mr. Puzzles to death. And let's go back to that fight scene real quick. The animation, I gotta talk about this whole fight scene again real quick. The animation on this fight scene was unreal. Revelations had the better fight scenes, but this is a second place for the best SMG4 fight scene. Like, you could tell they were animating the shit out of this. Media Excalibur, I think, animated on this scene, and you could tell his animation was unreal. This, like, whole fucking fight scene in the TV dimension was probably, if not one of the greatest things SMG4 has done, right besides Revelations, of course. But, yeah, this whole ass fight scene was probably my favorite moment of the movie. It was like your multiversal acknowledge it, and it just ends with Mr. Weapons stabbing Mr. Puzzles. And let's get to the last 7 minutes of the movie because I'm running out of space. Mr. Weapons and Tomb break out of the TV, SMG4 crew in shock, and then he says, you think you could abandon me just so you can play pretend and trick someone else to be your friend? And then he says, so you could use them too. And the SMG4 crew, especially Maggie, are in shock. And this is when the emotional moments hit. I cried during this reaction. And Maggie says, after everything I did, after I trusted you, against every warning, against my own gut, you still found a way to twist it? To lie? To manipulate me? And Puzzles says, Maggie, hold on a moment, I could explain. And then Maggie's like, don't bother with me. And then Mr. Puzzles is like, I've changed and stuff like that. You really just, you wanted to use it over mine? Maggie's like, I don't even need you anymore. It's something like that. And then Maggie is clearly distraught when Puzzles says, if I could win you over. And then Maggie's like, you know what? Is this some old twisted game to you? And Puzzles is like saying, oh, come on, please just give me a chance. And Maggie said, I did. I believed in you. But SMG4 was right. You'll never change. And this line, this shot, I cannot stress enough, means and doesn't mean something to me at the same time. This shot just proves everything. This shot is one of, if not the top 20 best shots in SMG4 history. The best, pictures I could take from this shot. And Mr. Weapons slams Puzzles to the ground, almost about to kill him until the Death Cube shows up, flunging Puzzles, destroying the upper half of the castle, kind of. And the Death Cube spots Mr. Weapons and Tomb, and they escape, obviously. Thank God they're not dead. And the Death Cube gives him this coupon, and then he runs out and finds Mr. Weapons. Meanwhile, Meggy is fully distraught with everything she's done. And remember, Leggy is still inside of Meggy. And can we just take a look at this face? Not SMG4, but Meggy. This face just proves her guilt. Oh my god. I make this someone's profile picture. Anyways, it ends with saying, "You were right. You were an idiot. I am an idiot." And Meggy's like, dude, this scene, and we were so close to getting a Mario X Meggy moment. This is almost there. We were almost there. Well, kind of. Do it for the Wuffy, please. And then Meggy and SMG4 have a really good conversation. And Meggy's like, "What have I done? I should have done what I did." And then SMG4 is like, "You're not an idiot. He's an idiot for doing it." And Meggy, this shot, man, what do I even say? This shot, I just cannot believe it. The animation, this part was up the rails. And SMG3, and still in his diamond armor, got the ticket. And then the Death Cube, and while that's all happening at the castle, the Death Cube is still finding Mr. Weapons and Tomb. And this is when the emotional beats really hit. And the Death Cube continues to search for them, destroys some parts of the trash, and we end the same way like we did in Silence of the Cats, but only it's a reverse order this time. Weapons is lying on the ground like he did in Silence of the Cats, but he sees the TV and he realizes, I can't be friends with that guy anymore. So he shoots the television, and back with Mr. Puzzles flying out, and then, blue screen of death. He powers on and he realizes, he's back at the prison. And this part was the most emotional I've ever been. Well, besides Axel's death and the revelations of Mark, but this is still a top 5. Well, I could rank this at a top 10 SMG4 emotional moment right here. Some of these really do hit. And Puzzles reminisces all about the movie, but this screenshot, you could easily put it as a top 10 emotional SMG4 moment. You could just put it as that. I legit cried during that scene. I legit cried during the end of my reaction. This is just a work of art. The animation is unreal. And Puzzles says, "What have I done?" And then he stands up, he holds the weapon and says, "I'm going to fix this," before it fades to black. My God. This arc was, if not one of the greatest achievements, the second best arc in SMG4 history. This movie just proves you can do SMG4 right. It is everything I wanted from the Puzzle Vision saga. The Puzzle Vision saga movie was good, but it had a few problems. But this, you could literally, this is the real Puzzle Vision movie. It has every single character development in the series. Literally, so many emotional moments. Especially that ending. It gets all of the things in 2024 right. It perfectly has a great story, great character drama, great animation. Up until that fight scene, literally, I could talk about the fight scene all day long, and the animation was unreal. But every single moment of this movie just made me love this movie even more. Pretty much, it is like the cornerstone of SMG4 movies. Even though Silence of the Cats was 10th place on my SMG4 ranking, it still is good. But this, like, you could literally animate this, like, I don't even know what to say anymore. This is why I love this movie and this whole arc as a whole. And if it wasn't for this movie, my channel would have been what it is today. It is just a great return to formula for the series and SMG4 as a whole. Pretty much, if not one of the best things SMG4 has ever put. Right besides Revelations, of course. Even though Revelations is my favorite SMG4 movie of all time, this is a close second. And the reason why it is second, because Revelations has better animation. Well, kind of. And yeah, I don't even know what else to say, man. This is the story of why Guns and Puzzles is a cinematic masterpiece. Well, that's the end of this video. This arc was, if not in my top 2 SMG4 arcs, right above Western Spaghetti and right before Revelations. I hope you guys enjoy this video on why Guns and Puzzles arc / Prison Vision arc / Prison Breakout arc is a cinematic masterpiece. And huge thank you to all my subscribers I've been gaining for the past year. And if it wasn't for you guys, this channel would have blown up like what it is today. I love making reaction content, and it's just the things I do. And yeah, one last thing before I end the video. Thanks. I know he's not going to see this video, but Schaffrillas Productions, I would like to say thank you for giving me this idea for the Cinematic Masterpiece series. I will be doing more of the Cinematic Masterpiece series once WATFE 2025 comes out. I will be doing more SMG4 Cinematic Masterpieces with arcs in the near future. Anyways, I've been Mr. Puzzles and More. See ya later, friends!